So Justice Minister Ronald Lamola has likened the Stellenbosch urinating saga to disgracing the Constitution itself. The minister was speaking at the commemoration of the 20th anniversary of the Third World Conference Against Racism, Racial Discrimination and Xenophobia. The Stellenbosch University was actually thrown into the spotlight when a white student was caught on camera urinating on a black student's belongings. Babalo Ndwayana has since laid a criminal charge against Theuns du Toit. Lamola says there's no reason for the accused in these kind of matters to be released on bail. Take a listen.
We've made attempts to redress the imbalances created by apartheid, but equally, we've seen that some amongst us, especially our fellow white citizens, have not bought into the new nation we are trying to construct. Some of them continue to perpetuate some of these racial supremacist tendencies or racism, as some of the speakers have said. Those amongst us who insist on brandishing symbols of oppression in our faces undermine this diversity the country is trying to build. And I agree that maybe we should have ensured that they also participate in this engagement, but it's not all lost, because the report will be released and it will help to shape the discussion on this matter. We cannot and should not celebrate symbols which continue to divide us and undermine the rule of law. Not only that, to brandish these symbols of apartheid is completely deny the harm caused by our discriminative past.
You know, part of the questions that have been raised on the back of that is, does this country have laws that are strong enough to fight racial injustice? To help us unpack this and many other related issues, let's bring in Zaid Kimmie, who joins us now from via our video link. And Mr. Kimmie is part of the Foundation for Human Rights. It's great to have you on the program, Zaid. Thanks very much indeed for making time. I mean, you know, issues around racism, race relations sometimes feel incredibly elusive because, you know, it's not always clear to be able to prove that you're a victim of racial injustice. How then do we address that in light of what the minister said yesterday?
Thank you for having me. Obviously, the first thing to note is that this is a very regrettable incident. But I think we lose an opportunity to think more systemically if we don't see this as part of a larger problem of intolerance and injustice. And often that intolerance starting to lead to violent action. So in our country, we do have this wide-ranging problem of intolerance, and we can see it in incidents like this, and we can see it in the incidents of xenophobic violence, where people were killed, and we can see it in the everyday incidents of gender-based violence and femicide. So there's a larger systemic problem we have to face. In this particular case, do we need additional laws to prosecute the person who committed this act? I don't necessarily think so. I think our justice system is perfectly capable of prosecuting this individual, and certainly he must face the consequences of his actions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Please go on.
The question for, sorry?
Please go on.
Yeah, I think the bigger question that this incident gives us an opportunity to grapple with is, what have we been doing and what are we doing to try and prevent these sorts of actions from happening in future? One approach is to say, let's carry on what we've been doing for the past 20, 30 years and hope that miraculously people come round and we build this better society. And I think that it would be naive to believe that we can simply carry on with what we've been doing and hope to get different results. Yeah. So we need to think more creatively about what sort of programs are needed and what sort of resources are needed to make sure that people who are at risk of becoming radicalized and taking the law into their own hands or committing acts of this sort, that we can catch those sort of incidents early and give people a reasonable chance to become better human beings by educating them, by spreading our constitutional values. But simply asking people to be better is not going to work. We need something more.
Yeah, and I wonder what that looks like. You know, I wonder what that more in real terms looks like, because typically what I find is that perhaps even these kind of discussions take place when the damage has already been done.
Yes, and that's unfortunate because these incidents get picked up and they're amplified and they become the thing that we're talking about. And too often, as with the initial framing of your discussion, the question is around punishment. You know, what do we do to make this individual pay for what he's done? What are we doing to make sure that the people who killed migrants under Operation Dudula receive any justice? In that case, apparently it's not that important, and no one's being prosecuted. There are no calls for people to be prosecuted. So, you know, the question is, what can we do? We've had successful education, wide-ranging education programs in the past. We had a very effective program around our own constitution, making people aware of those rights. We've had very effective programs around HIV/AIDS, changing people's sexual behavior. All of those programs required resources and required coordination. You know, what we can't do is say, let every government department in their business carry on with what they're doing now. Let's put, you know, some window dressing around it and then hope to call it an effective program. So there's a lot that I think has to be done. We have to have programs of the scale of the campaigns against smoking. We have the campaigns against HIV/AIDS. It has to be a wide-ranging, everyone has to be part of that program. Mm-hmm. And it has to start with our school children and implementing human rights education as a fundamental part of our curriculum. And there are small steps that are happening in that direction, but time is not with us. This is a problem that's going to take a long time to solve, but we have to start soon.
Right.
Otherwise, you know, in 5 or 10 years' time, we're talking about further incidents of the sort, and the problem may, in fact, have got worse.
We've been here before, right? In fact, I'm reminded of what took place in 2018, I think it was. Vicky Momberg, who had that racist rant, was captured on video. Eventually was sentenced to 2 years for that incident where she used the K word several times. Interestingly enough, in that case, she was actually found guilty of criminal injuria, right, which is essentially impeding on someone's dignity, and not necessarily of racism, you know. And I guess that, again, brings us to sharp focus questions around whether or not even the framing of our laws allow people to be called racist when, in fact, they've been found guilty of racism, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. I'm not sure that that's particularly important. You know, the justice system is there to ensure that when people transgress the laws, that they receive appropriate punishment. That's one part of what our justice system does. And I think most people would agree that the punishment in the Vicky Momberg case was appropriate. We don't need to go around labeling people after the fact. You know, someone's committed a crime, they receive their punishment. This is not about stoning in the public square.
You think it's not important that people know at least what the criminal injuria was for, especially in a context where we're in a country that's really struggling to deal with things like racial injustice?
I don't think there was any doubt in the Vicky Momberg case about what it was for. It received a lot of publicity. I don't think that it's necessarily the case that an additional set of laws saying you're a racist will make any difference. And, you know, these are sort of post-fact actions. They do nothing to treat the cause of what's happening. You know, do we believe, for example, that people are born racists and that, you know, this is simply something that happens, and we can deal out adequate punishment when they act on their racist impulses? Or is it something that we believe that people are not born racist, that with appropriate education, appropriate awareness, people can change. So I think, we shouldn't get caught up on the punishment side of this. We really should take the opportunity to say that this is a problem, and it's a serious problem, and it's potentially going to get worse. People in their social media cocoons are bombarded with messages that reinforce this type of behavior. And certainly, as we've seen in this very high-profile case in Buffalo in the United States, sometimes people will act on it and cause actual bodily harm and kill people. So we have to be aware of what that process is, and it's the responsibility of the state to intervene and put in place programs that stop this sort of radicalization. And I think this should be an opportunity for us to commit and to ask the state to commit to those sorts of programs rather than, to pick a random example, putting up enormous flags and hoping that makes a difference.
Right. Well, interesting take. Thanks very much indeed for speaking to us. Appreciate your time on this Tuesday morning. Zaid Kimmie is with the Foundation for Human Rights. Once again, thanks very much indeed for your time.